December 20th, 1944. A frozen crossroads called Bastogne, and 12,000 elite troops are thrown into it like a cork in a bottle. By nightfall, the enemy is everywhere. Tanks on the roads, infantry in the trees, artillery walking closer with every hour. And then the message comes, surrender or be destroyed. But this isn't a story about a heroic charge. It's about how 12,000 men held a line, in snow, in hunger, under nonstop attacks, until the entire offensive broke against them. December 16th, 1944, 4 days earlier. The Ardennes forest is supposed to be quiet, a rest sector. Generals call it the ghost front because nothing ever happens there. Green troops get sent there to learn the ropes. Veterans rotate in to catch their breath. That's the theory. At 5:30 a.m., the theory dies screaming. 500,000 German soldiers, supported by 1,400 tanks and assault guns, erupt out of the forest along an 85-mile front. The largest German offensive in the West since 1940. Entire American divisions are overrun before they understand what's happening. Radio nets go silent. Command posts are captured with their maps still on the walls. Units dissolve into the snow. By the second day, there's a bulge punched 40 miles deep into Allied lines. And at the center of that bulge? A town nobody's heard of. Bastogne. Population, 8,000. 7 roads converge there like spokes on a wheel. Whoever controls Bastogne controls the road network. Whoever controls the roads controls the offensive. It's not a fortress. It's not a stronghold. It's just a crossroads with cobblestone streets and a few stone buildings. But in war, sometimes a crossroads matters more than a castle. The Germans know this. They need Bastogne to get their armor west, toward the Meuse River, toward Antwerp, toward splitting the Allied armies in half and maybe, just maybe, forcing a negotiated peace before the Reich collapses. The Americans are starting to realize it too. December 17th. Chaos. That's the only word for it. Units are retreating everywhere. Headquarters don't know where the front line is because there isn't one anymore. Just pockets of resistance and huge gaps the Germans are pouring through. Fuel depots are being blown up to keep them out of enemy hands. Supply convoys are getting ambushed. Entire regiments are encircled. And in the middle of this nightmare, someone looks at a map and says, "We need to hold Bastogne." The problem? There's almost nobody there. A few engineers, some stragglers, a medical company, an artillery battalion. That's it. The town is wide open, and German spearheads are already racing toward it. So the call goes out. Get somebody to Bastogne. Get them there fast, and for God's sake, tell them to hold. The 101st Airborne Division is resting near Reims, France. They've just come off 2.5 months of brutal fighting in Holland, Operation Market Garden, the disaster at Arnhem, the long, slow fight through the Dutch countryside. They're supposed to be off the line, getting replacements, repairing equipment, sleeping in beds for the first time in weeks. Instead, at 8:30 p.m. on December 17th, the order comes, movement in 1 hour. No winter gear issued, no time to draw extra ammunition, just get on the trucks and go. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what they're facing. All they know is that somebody, somewhere, is in serious trouble. The convoy rolls through the night. Headlights off, roads jammed with retreating units going the opposite direction. Wounded men stumble past, trucks burning on the roadside, officers shouting conflicting orders. The road is a river of panic flowing away from the front. The 101st is driving straight into it, December 18th, 19. Bastogne. The paratroopers arrive in pieces. First the headquarters staff, then the artillery, then infantry battalions trickling in throughout the day, cold and confused, trying to make sense of a situation nobody can explain clearly. What they find isn't encouraging. Bastogne is filling up with stragglers, men from broken units, walking wounded, support troops who've never fired a rifle in combat. The roads are clogged with vehicles trying to escape west. Engineers are wiring bridges for demolition. Civilians are fleeing with whatever they can carry. And from the east, The sound of artillery is getting closer. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe takes command. He's the acting division commander, an artilleryman, blunt, practical, not given to drama. He looks at the map, looks at the forces he has, looks at the roads filling up with German columns. Then he starts forming a perimeter. It's not a deliberate defensive position. It's not a fortress with interlocking fields of fire and prepared bunkers. It's just a ring. 12,000 men spread thin around a town, digging into frozen ground with entrenching tools that barely scratch the surface. The perimeter is roughly circular, about 16 miles around. That means each man is responsible for defending roughly 4.5 feet of front line, if they were spread evenly, which they're not. Key roads get more troops. Gaps get less. Some spots have only listening posts between battalions. They're not ready for this. Winter uniforms? Barely any. Most men are still wearing the standard wool uniform and field jacket, inadequate for sub-zero temperatures. Ammunition? Enough for a few days of light contact, maybe? Medical supplies? The aid stations are already rationing morphine. Food? Some K-rations and whatever the mess units manage to bring, but they dig anyway. The ground is frozen solid. 6 inches down, your shovel hits dirt like concrete. Men take turns hacking at the earth, switching every few minutes when their arms give out. Some foxholes are only a foot deep, just enough to lie flat and hope the shrapnel passes overhead. By December 19th, the perimeter is closed. That's the official term. Closed. What it really means is, we're surrounded, and we're pretending it's part of the plan. Because by now, the German columns have bypassed Bastogne on 3 sides. Panzers are rolling past on the northern roads, heading west. Infantry units are probing from the east and south. Reconnaissance elements are everywhere, testing the line, looking for weak spots. The trap is forming. And the 101st? They're right in the middle of it, holding a circle of frozen mud and waiting for the hammer to fall. December 20th, the first serious attacks come before dawn. German infantry, supported by armor, hit the eastern edge of the perimeter. Artillery pounds the positions. Machine guns rake the tree lines. The fighting is close, sometimes within grenade range. The line holds. Barely. More attacks throughout the day. Probes on the north. Heavy pressure on the south. Each one gets beaten back, but each one costs men the Americans can't replace. Casualties are carried to aid stations in town. The wounded keep piling up. And then the roads start closing. Not all at once. One by one. The southern route gets cut by German tanks. The eastern road, already under fire, becomes impassable. By nightfall on December 20th, there's only one road still open to the west, and it's under German observation. The senior officers know what this means. Bastogne is encircled. No more reinforcements coming in, no more supply trucks, no more evacuation of the wounded. The 12,000 men inside the perimeter are it. What they have in their pockets, their foxholes, and their ammunition pouches, that's all they're going to get. The word spreads through the line faster than any radio message. We're cut off. Some men take it in stride. Paratroopers are used to being surrounded. It's what happens when you jump behind enemy lines. Others stare into the dark and do the math. 12,000 against how many? Nobody knows. Estimates range from 20,000 to 50,000 Germans outside the perimeter. And they have tanks. Lots of tanks. That night, the temperature drops below freezing. Men huddle in shallow foxholes, trying to stay awake, trying to keep their rifles from freezing, trying not to think about what happens if the line breaks. Nobody sleeps much. And in the distance, all around the perimeter, they can hear the sound of German vehicles moving, engines idling, tracks clanking, voices shouting orders in a language they don't understand. The enemy is everywhere. December 21st. Morning comes gray and cold. Fog hangs in the trees like wet cotton. Visibility is maybe 50 yards, sometimes less. You can hear the enemy moving out there, but you can't see them until they're almost on top of you. The Germans know it too. All along the perimeter, attacks intensify. Not just probes anymore. Full battalion-strength assaults with armor support. Tanks rolling up the roads, infantry following in their wake. Artillery prepping each position before the ground troops go in. The Americans fire back with everything they have. Bazookas, anti-tank guns, artillery called in so close that shrapnel rains down on their own foxholes. And somehow, against every tactical principle, the line holds. But barely. Casualties are mounting. Aid stations in town are overflowing. Medics work without anesthetic because they've already used up the morphine. Men with shrapnel wounds get bandaged and sent back to the line because there's nowhere else to put them. Ammunition is becoming a problem. Rifle companies are down to a few bandoliers per man. Machine gun crews are rationing bursts. 3 rounds, no more. Artillery batteries are given strict fire missions. Only shoot when you can see the target and kill it. And still the attacks keep coming. Foxhole. You're in a hole barely 2 feet deep. You and maybe one other guy squeezed together for warmth because if you don't share body heat, you'll freeze before the Germans even reach you. Your boots are wet. Your hands are numb. You haven't slept more than 20 minutes at a time in 3 days. Your rifle is across your lap. You check it every few minutes, working the bolt to make sure it's not frozen. You can't see more than 30 yards through the fog. Every sound makes your heart hammer. And then the artillery starts. You hear the scream first, that rising whistle, and then the world explodes. Trees disintegrate, the ground heaves. You press your face into the frozen mud and pray the next one doesn't land on top of you. The shelling stops. Silence. 10 seconds. 20. Then you hear them coming. Voices shouting in German. The clank of equipment. Boots in the snow. They're out there in the fog, moving toward your position, and you can't see them yet, but you know they're coming. 50 yards, 40, 30. Someone down the line opens fire. Then everyone does. Muzzle flashes strobe through the fog. The Germans fire back. Tracers zip past your head. Grenades start going off, and then it stops. They pull back, regroup, try again an hour later. This is what holding the line actually means. December 22nd. The noose tightens. German forces now completely surround Bastogne. Every road is cut. Every approach is covered by enemy observation posts. Inside the perimeter, the situation is deteriorating. Ammunition stockpiles are down to 25%. Some rifle companies are below 10 rounds per man. Artillery batteries are rationing shells. Each gun gets maybe 10 to 15 rounds per day. Food is running low. The mess kitchens are serving 1 meal a day, usually thin soup. K-rations are being split between 2 men. Some positions go 24 hours without food at all. Medical supplies are almost gone. Plasma is running out. Bandages are being reused. Surgeons are operating without anesthesia, and the wounded keep coming. Outside, the attacks continue. Relentless. Grinding. Every day the Germans test a different section of the perimeter, looking for the weak point. They haven't found it yet. But they're getting close. The weather. Fog, low clouds, freezing rain, snow, visibility near 0 most days. For the defenders, it's miserable. Frostbite is becoming as much a casualty producer as German bullets. But the real problem is the sky. The Americans have air superiority. On a clear day, the skies would be full of fighters and bombers, P-47s strafing German columns, B-26 dropping supplies. But there are no clear days. The clouds are too low. The fog is too thick. Pilots can't see the ground. Transport planes can't drop supplies. Fighter bombers can't attack. The 101st is on its own. And the Germans know it. They're moving in broad daylight, concentrating their armor, bringing up reinforcements, everything they couldn't do if the weather was clear. The weather isn't just an inconvenience. It's a strategic advantage for the enemy. Every day the clouds stay low, the Germans get stronger and the Americans get weaker. How long can we hold without air support? Nobody wants to answer that question. December 22, afternoon. And then something strange happens. 4 Germans appear on the road from the southeast, walking toward the American lines. 2 officers, 2 enlisted men. One of them is carrying a white flag, a flag of truce. The outpost soldiers don't know what to make of it. They let them approach, blindfold them, bring them into the perimeter. The German officers are polite, formal. They present a typed message, in English, and request it be delivered to the American commander. It's an ultimatum. The ultimatum. The document is polite, professional, almost apologetic in tone. It explains that Bastogne is completely surrounded, that the American position is hopeless, that continued resistance will result in annihilation, that German forces possess overwhelming superiority. Therefore, to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, the German commander is offering honorable terms of surrender. The Americans have 2 hours to decide. If they accept, they will be treated as prisoners of war. Officers may keep their sidearms. The wounded will receive medical care. If they refuse, the German forces will destroy the town and everyone in it. 2 hours. The staff officers crowd around the message, reading it over and over. Some are angry, some are grimly amused. Someone asks, "What do we tell them?" General McAuliffe reads the ultimatum one more time, crumples it, tosses it on the desk. Then he says something unprintable. His staff laughs, the kind of laughter that comes when you're so exhausted and so far past fear that absurdity is the only sane response. But the German officers are waiting for an official reply. They need something in writing. McAuliffe sits down, thinks for a moment, then writes one word on a piece of paper. "Nuts," he hands it to his staff. "That's your answer." Confusion. One officer asks, "Is that all?" McAuliffe nods. It's all they deserve. The typed response goes back to the German officers, still blindfolded, still waiting under guard. An American officer reads the reply aloud. "Nuts!" The Germans are baffled. What does this mean? Is it affirmative or negative? The American officer grins. It means, "Go to hell." Understanding dawns. The German officers stiffen, nod curtly, turn and walk back toward their lines. No surrender. No negotiation. The message is clear. You want Bastogne? Come and take it. Word spreads through the perimeter within hours. Men in frozen foxholes, half-starved and low on ammunition, hear about the reply and grin. Some laugh out loud. Others just nod and go back to watching the tree line. It's not hope exactly. It's something harder. Defiance. The kind that says, "We know we're surrounded, we know the odds, and we don't care. You want this town? You're going to have to kill every last one of us." December 23rd. Dawn. The German response to "nuts" comes in the form of artillery. Sustained, heavy, methodical. Shells walk through the perimeter in grid patterns, systematically pounding every position. The town itself takes direct hits. Buildings collapse, fires start, civilians huddle in basements while the world shakes apart above them. This isn't harassing fire. This is preparation for a major assault. Everyone knows it. The question is, where will the main attack come? Answer: everywhere. German forces hit multiple points simultaneously. Northwest, northeast, south. It's a coordinated effort designed to find the breaking point, stretch the defenders until something snaps. And it almost works. On the southern edge, German armor breaks through the outer positions. Tanks roll into the perimeter. Infantry follow. For 30 minutes, it looks like the line is collapsing. Then American tank destroyers appear, moving fast, firing on the move, and slam rounds into the German panzers at point-blank range. Infantry counterattack with grenades and bazookas. Artillery fires directly over open sights. The Germans pull back, regroup, attack again. The fighting is savage, house to house in some places, foxhole to foxhole in others. Men run out of ammunition and fight with entrenching tools and bayonets. By mid-morning, the line stabilizes. But the cost is brutal. Entire squads are gone, platoons reduced to 15 men. Company commanders are dead or wounded. Junior officers and sergeants are running units 2 ranks above their pay grade because there's nobody else left. How much longer can this go on? Nobody has an answer. And then, around 9 a.m., someone looks up. The sky opens. For the first time in a week, the clouds break. Patches of blue appear through the gray. The fog thins. Visibility extends from 50 yards to 500, then a mile, then clear to the horizon. Men stare upward like they've forgotten what the sun looks like. And then they hear it. Engines, distant at first, then louder, then unmistakable. Aircraft, lots of them. From the west, formations of C-47 transport planes appear, wave after wave, flying low, engines roaring. The sky fills with them. Dozens, hundreds. The Germans hear them too. Anti-aircraft guns open up. Black puffs of flak explode among the formations. Some planes take hits. One spins down trailing smoke, but the rest keep coming. At 11:50 a.m., the drop begins. Parachutes blossom over Bastogne. Red, white, blue, yellow, each color marking different supplies. Food, ammunition, medical supplies, artillery shells, everything the garrison has been screaming for. The bundles fall like rain. Some land inside the perimeter. Some land just outside, in no man's land between the lines. American soldiers sprint out under fire to recover them, dragging crates and bundles back to the foxholes while German machine guns chew up the snow around them. Not every bundle makes it. Some parachutes fail. Some supplies are destroyed on impact. Some fall directly into German positions. But enough gets through. By the end of the day, 241 planes have dropped 144 tons of supplies. It's not enough to fully resupply the garrison. Not even close. But it's enough to keep fighting. Enough to make the impossible slightly less impossible. More importantly, it's proof. Proof that they're not abandoned. Proof that someone is trying. Proof that if the weather holds, more supplies are coming. The effect on morale is instantaneous. Men who were staring into their empty ammunition pouches with dead eyes suddenly have 20 rounds again. Machine gun crews who were down to their last belt are back in business. Medics have morphine. Artillery batteries have shells. And just as important as the supplies, the fighter bombers. P-47 Thunderbolts swarm over the battlefield like angry hornets. They strafe German positions, bomb supply columns, attack anything that moves outside the American perimeter. For the first time since the siege began, the Germans are the ones getting hammered from above. Tank columns that were moving openly on the roads scatter for cover. Infantry units that were massing for attacks disperse. Artillery batteries that were firing with impunity suddenly find themselves targeted by aircraft diving out of the sun. The entire dynamic of the battle shifts. Suddenly, the defenders aren't just holding on by their fingernails. They're hitting back. December 24th, Christmas Eve. The attacks continue, but they're different now. More cautious, less concentrated. The Germans can't mass their forces the way they did before because American planes are circling overhead, waiting for targets. Supply drops continue throughout the day. More parachutes, more ammunition, more food. It's still not enough to break the siege. The perimeter is still surrounded. The Germans still outnumber the defenders. The situation is still desperate. But the math has changed. Before, it was a countdown to collapse. How many days until the ammunition runs out, until the men are too weak to fight, until the line finally breaks? Now? Now it's a race. Can relief forces reach Bastogne before the Germans break through? Because relief is coming. General Patton's Third Army is driving north, trying to smash through the German lines and reach the surrounded garrison. It's a brutal slog, attacking through snow against prepared defenses, with every mile costing men and tanks. But Patton is moving fast. Faster than the Germans expected. Faster than some Allied commanders thought possible. Inside Bastogne, nobody knows how close he is. Radio communication is spotty. Messages get through occasionally, but they're vague. Relief in progress. Continue to hold. How long? Days? Hours? Nobody will say. So the garrison does the only thing it can do. Keep fighting. Night. Christmas Eve. It's strange, this night. In some foxholes, men are singing carols quietly. In others, they're cleaning weapons in silence. Some positions get shelled continuously. Others are weirdly quiet, like even the Germans are taking a breath. The aid stations are packed. Surgeons work by candlelight, trying to save men who've been waiting days for treatment. Chaplains move through the positions, offering what comfort they can. In the command post, staff officers study maps by lamplight, planning for tomorrow's attacks, tomorrow's counterattacks, trying to anticipate where the Germans will hit next. And in the foxholes, the defenders wait, cold, hungry, exhausted, but still there, still holding. The word impossible gets used a lot when describing Bastogne, how it was impossible for 12,000 men to hold against so many, impossible to survive without supplies, impossible to maintain morale under such conditions. But here's the thing about impossible. It's not a fact. It's a prediction, and predictions can be wrong. The men in those foxholes don't feel heroic. They don't feel like they're performing miracles. They feel cold and scared and tired, but they're not leaving. Not because they're superhuman, not because they don't understand the odds, because somebody has to hold this ground. Because if they don't, the offensive succeeds. Because every hour they hold is another hour for Patton to get closer. So they stay. One more hour. One more attack. One more frozen night. December 25th, Christmas Day. The attacks resume at dawn. German forces hit hard on multiple fronts, trying to break through before relief arrives. They know time is running out. They know Patton is coming. They know if they don't take Bastogne now, the whole offensive stalls. So they throw everything at it. Tanks, infantry, artillery, elite SS units, Volksgrenadier divisions. Anything that can shoot. The fighting is desperate, vicious. Men on both sides are fighting with the knowledge that this might be the last throw of the dice. The defenders give ground in places, fall back to secondary positions, counterattack, hold, fall back again. But they don't break. By afternoon, the German attacks are losing momentum, not because they've been defeated, they haven't, but because they're exhausted too, because they've been attacking for days and they're running into the same problem. You can surround a position, but you still have to take it, and taking it costs. More than the Germans calculated, more than they can afford. The sun sets on Christmas Day with the perimeter still intact, battered, bloodied, held together by sheer stubbornness, but intact. And somewhere to the south, through the snow and the smoke and the artillery fire, Patton's tanks are grinding closer. December 26th. Morning. The sound reaches the perimeter before the tanks do. Engines, lots of them, coming from the south. For a moment, nobody's sure. Is it another German attack? Reinforcements moving up? The artillery falls silent. Men grip their weapons, staring toward the tree line, waiting. And then someone spots them. American tanks. Sherman tanks, rolling up the road from Assenois, guns traversing, tracks chewing through the snow. Behind them, half-tracks full of infantry, tank destroyers, supply trucks, Patton's 4th Armored Division. They've punched, through. The link-up happens around 4:45 p.m. on December 26th. Elements of the 37th Tank Battalion reach the southern edge of the Bastogne perimeter. Officers shake hands. Men who haven't smiled in a week are grinning like idiots. The siege is lifted. But here's what doesn't happen. No one throws down their weapons and cheers. No one declares victory. No one thinks the battle is over. Because it isn't. The corridor Patton carved is narrow, barely wide enough for a single road. German forces still surround Bastogne on 3 sides. They're still attacking. They're still trying to cut the road and re-establish the siege. Relieved doesn't mean safe. What it means is, supplies can get in, wounded can get out, reinforcements can arrive. The garrison isn't fighting alone anymore, but they're still fighting. The days after, December 27th, German counterattacks hit the relief corridor, trying to sever it. Tank battles erupt along the southern road. Infantry clash in the woods. The fighting is just as brutal as before, maybe worse, because now both sides know what's at stake. The Americans hold the road. Barely. More supplies flow in, more reinforcements. The 101st gets rest. Some units pulled off the line for the first time in 10 days. Hot food, dry socks, sleep. But not everyone. The perimeter still needs defending. Attacks still come daily. Men still die. December 28th. The Germans try again. Massed armor assault from the northwest. They get within a mile of town before American tank destroyers and artillery stop them cold. Burning panzers litter the approaches. December 29th. More attacks. More counterattacks. The Germans are desperate now, throwing everything they have left into breaking through. But the momentum has shifted. They're not attacking a surrounded garrison anymore. They're attacking a reinforced position with air support and resupply. It's not the same fight. By early January, the German offensive is stalling across the entire front. The bulge, the huge, salient punched into Allied lines, is being squeezed from all sides. German units are pulling back, trying to consolidate, trying to salvage something from the disaster. Bastogne doesn't fall. The crossroads stay in American hands. And because of that, the offensive fails. The numbers. Let's talk about cost. The 101st Airborne and Attached Unit suffered approximately 2,000 casualties during the siege, killed, wounded, or missing. That's roughly 1 in 6 men who entered the perimeter. Some units were hit worse. Individual companies were reduced to 20 or 30 effectives. Entire platoons ceased to exist. The Germans lost more. Estimates vary wildly, somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 casualties in the direct fighting around Bastogne, with thousands more lost in the broader offensive. But numbers don't tell the whole story. The real cost was operational. Every day the Germans spent trying to take Bastogne was a day they weren't advancing west. Every division tied down in the siege was a division that couldn't exploit breakthroughs elsewhere. Every tank destroyed on the approaches was a tank that wouldn't reach the Meuse River. Bastogne became a black hole in the German offensive, sucking in resources, time, momentum. The kind of delay that turns a breakthrough into a stalemate. And in December 1944, the Germans couldn't afford stalemate. They needed speed, they needed the roads, they needed to reach Antwerp before the Allies recovered. They got none of those things, because 12,000 men refused to move. Why it worked? Let's be clear. This shouldn't have worked. By every rational calculation, Bastogne should have fallen. The defenders were outnumbered, surrounded, outgunned, undersupplied, and fighting in conditions that should have broken morale in the first 48 hours. So why didn't it break? 3 reasons. First, terrain. Bastogne sits at a natural choke point. 7 roads converge there, which means the Germans couldn't just bypass it. Not if they wanted to move armor and supplies west quickly. They needed those roads, which meant they had to take the town. But the same geography that made Bastogne important also made it defensible. The perimeter formed a rough circle, allowing defenders to shift reserves to threatened sectors quickly. The roads the Germans needed also channeled their attacks into predictable avenues, making it easier to position defenses. The terrain didn't win the battle, but it made winning possible. Second, weather. Ironic, right? The weather that nearly killed the garrison also saved it. The fog and low clouds prevented German air superiority from mattering. If the Luftwaffe had been able to fly freely, they would have pounded the American positions into rubble. Instead, the weather neutralized air power for both sides, until December 23rd, when it cleared just long enough for American resupply and then stayed clear enough to give the defenders the advantage. The weather was an enemy. Then, it was an ally. Then it was the deciding factor. Third, people. This is the part that's hardest to quantify. Why did men stay in frozen foxholes when surrendering would have meant warmth and food and an end to the fear? Why did units keep fighting when their ammunition was almost gone? Why did the line hold when every tactical manual said it shouldn't? You can talk about training, discipline, leadership, unit cohesion. All of those mattered. But at the core, it was simpler than that. They stayed because the guy next to them stayed, because pulling back meant abandoning your buddy, because someone had to hold, and if not you, then who? It wasn't heroism in the Hollywood sense. No dramatic speeches, no charges with flags flying. It was just refusal. The stubborn, grinding refusal to quit when quitting was the logical choice. That's not something you can put in a field manual, but it's the reason Bastogne didn't fall. The broader picture. Zoom out for a second. The Battle of the Bulge, the entire offensive, was Germany's last major gamble in the West. Hitler scraped together every available division, hoarded fuel and ammunition for months, and bet everything on one massive surprise attack. If it had worked, if the panzers had reached the Meuse, if the Allied armies had been split, if Antwerp had fallen, the war might have dragged on for months or even years longer. Instead, the offensive stalled. Not because of one battle, but because of a series of stands like Bastogne. Small units holding key positions, delaying actions, desperate defenses that bought time for the Allies to respond. Bastogne was the most famous, but it wasn't alone. Still, it mattered, because it held the roads, because it stopped the German timetable, because it turned a breakthrough into a battle of attrition the Germans couldn't win. By mid-January 1945, the Bulge was being erased. German forces pulled back to their start lines. The offensive had cost them irreplaceable losses. Men, tanks, fuel, aircraft, all wasted on an operation that gained nothing. 3 months later, Germany surrendered. Bastogne didn't end the war, but it helped ensure the war ended on schedule. What holding a line really means. We like our war stories simple. Good guys charge, bad guys retreat, flags get planted on hills. Bastogne doesn't fit that narrative. Nobody charged, nobody planted a flag. For 8 days, 12,000 men sat in holes in the ground and refused to leave. They were cold, hungry, scared, and running out of everything. And they won. Not by attacking, by enduring. That's the lesson, if there is one. Sometimes winning doesn't look like victory. Sometimes it looks like another frozen night in a foxhole, waiting for dawn, wondering if relief will come before the ammunition runs out. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is just stay. Not because it's glorious, because it's necessary. What they held. A frozen crossroads. 7 roads through snow-covered Belgium. A town nobody had heard of. That's what Bastogne was on a map. But in war, maps don't tell you what matters. What they actually held was time. Every hour the Germans spent trying to break through was an hour they weren't advancing west. Every attack that failed was another delay in their timetable. Every road they couldn't use was another bottleneck strangling their offensive. The 101st didn't know this in real time. Men in foxholes don't think about operational tempo or strategic momentum. They think about the next artillery barrage, the next attack, whether their rifle will fire when they need it to. But that's what they were buying. Time. Time for Patton to move north. Time for reserves to arrive. Time for the German offensive to lose its speed and collapse under its own weight. And they bought it with cold and hunger and blood. 3 lessons. If you're going to remember anything about Bastogne, remember these 3 things. 1. Terrain decides battles before the first. Shot is fired. Bastogne wasn't strategically important because of what was there. It was important because of what ran through it. Roads. In December 1944, with snow covering the countryside and vehicles confined to paved routes, roads were everything. The Germans needed them. The Americans denied them. That's the whole siege in one sentence. Forget castles and cities. Sometimes a crossroads matters more than a capital. Sometimes the most important piece of ground is the one that lets armies move. 2. Weather is a commander. The fog saved the defenders by grounding German air power. The clear skies on December 23rd saved them again by allowing resupply. The cold punished both sides, but hurt the undersupplied Americans more. Weather didn't care about tactics or strategy. It didn't take sides. But it shaped every decision, every attack, every moment of the siege. You can't control weather. But you can understand that it's not background, it's a participant. And sometimes it decides who wins. 3. Morale beats mathematics. On paper, Bastogne should have fallen in 3 days. The numbers said so. The logistics said so. Every staff officer looking at the map said so. But numbers don't pull triggers. People do. And people, exhausted, freezing, hungry people, decided they weren't leaving. Not because they had a better plan, not because they thought they'd win, because someone had to hold, and they were the ones in the hole. That decision, multiplied across 12,000 men, changed the outcome of a battle that the math said was already over. You can't quantify that. But you can't ignore it either. The final count. The siege lasted 8 days. December 20th to December 26th, if you count from full encirclement to relief. 8 days that stopped an offensive 6 weeks in the planning. 8 days that cost the Germans their last chance to change the war's outcome. 8 days of cold, fear, and fighting that most history books summarize in a paragraph. But if you were there, in the foxholes, in the aid stations, in the command posts listening to reports of attacks coming from every direction, those 8 days felt like forever. And for some, they were. 2,000 casualties. Men who went into Bastogne and didn't come out. Men who held the line until they couldn't anymore. Men whose names are on monuments now, but who were just soldiers then, doing a job that shouldn't have been survivable. They survived anyway. Most of them. The end that wasn't. Here's what didn't happen. The siege didn't end with a dramatic final battle. No climactic charge, no last-stand heroics. It ended with Patton's tanks rolling up a snowy road and officers shaking hands. It ended with supply trucks bringing food and ammunition. It ended with wounded men being loaded onto ambulances and driven south to hospitals. It ended quietly. The fighting continued for weeks afterward. The Germans kept attacking, trying to cut the corridor, trying to salvage something. But the crisis had passed. The impossible defense had succeeded. Bastogne held, and because it held, the Ardennes offensive failed. And because the offensive failed, the war in Europe stayed on schedule. And by May 1945, Germany surrendered. You can draw a line from those frozen foxholes to the end of the war. It's not a straight line. Lots of battles happened after Bastogne. Lots of men died after December 26th. But the line exists. The impossible thing. 12,000 men, surrounded, outnumbered, low on everything, fighting in weather that should have killed them before the enemy did. They didn't win by charging forward. They won by refusing to move, 1 frozen mile at a time, 1 foxhole at a time, 1 impossible hour at a time. They held a crossroads that wasn't supposed to matter, in a battle they weren't supposed to survive, against odds that should have crushed them. And they held it anyway. Not because they were superhuman, because they were soldiers. And sometimes, when the stakes are high, enough and the moment is desperate enough, ordinary soldiers do impossible things. Not with speeches or flags, with cold hands and empty stomachs and the simple, stubborn refusal to quit. That's Bastogne, a frozen town, a defiant answer, a line that didn't break, and the victory that looked like nothing more than staying alive until tomorrow.